Hello, my name's Rebecca Armstrong and I'm from Veterinary Sparkle, and I thought this week we might do a video blog. So last week I was speaking at a conference. I was at the SPVS Congress, and I was talking about breaking through barriers. So how do we thrive in practice? How do we break down barriers to communication in order to connect and in order to have really productive relationships that enable us to look after the well-being of each other, but also to perform in practice. So I thought I might share a few little bits from that talk. It seemed to go down really well and we had good attendance. So I thought, we'll share a little bit about that. So I'm going to share share it over a few blogs and just see how this works. So where to start? So I think I'll start on this blog by talking about feedback. So one of the things that I talked about in the talk was about the need for us to stop giving feedback, which sounds really counterintuitive to what communication's all about. You know, we've all been on the feedback courses, and I've ran them, where we talk about feedback's a gift and it's a two-way process. And you know, here's some tools to be able to have that conversation, and you know, it's an enabler of performance and all of these things, and none of that's wrong, but yet still we go on these courses, we learn, but then there's still something that gets in the way of feedback often. And the amount of times that I speak to people who talk about, you know, I've given this person feedback time and time again, you know, I've told them 3 or 4 times, you know, I've set actions, I've set goals, we've had feedback conversations, and nothing's shifted, nothing's moving forward. What's going on? And you know, or the other side, which is managers who are, I'm too busy to give feedback. You know, I know I should be doing it, I know I should be doing it more, but actually I don't do it. Something gets in the way. So feedback has something in it that doesn't work. And through a lot of the work we do, all of our work is really focused on, you know, our underpinning principle is wellness and well-being. And it's really informed through psychotherapy and psychology, a really deep understanding of people. And for me, the reason why feedback doesn't work and we've got to stop giving it is because the language that comes with it is something that just stops us connecting with it. So we might think that this is about semantics, but actually semantics matter. And the reason that they matter is this. So if we think about neurobiology, we all have a filing cabinet in our brain, which we call the limbic system, which is a filing cabinet of blueprints of the experiences that we've had. And our brain, the amygdala in our brain, is constantly scanning our environment to look for situations that are familiar to us. They could be the good stuff, but they could also be the not so good stuff. Now, somewhere in our filing cabinet, for every single one of us, is a blueprint about feedback. A blueprint about that word. When somebody says, I'd like to give you some feedback, we go into the filing cabinet and we get the blueprint. And not only that, when somebody indicates that they might want to give us feedback, or we feel the risk of feedback, the blueprint comes out anyway. Now, for some people, they really embrace feedback. They want to hear it. They love it. But for a lot of people, because we're dealing with complex, you know, parallel processes, you know, the manager has a feeling about giving feedback, what they imagine might happen, what that brings up for them, whether they've avoided it, whether they've done it in a clunky way, whether they've kind of landed it in a way that doesn't help, which creates the blueprint in the other. So as a manager, if I speak to us as managers now, not only are we dealing with our own stuff about what it feels like to give feedback, we're also dealing with our own stuff about what we feel about feedback, as well as the co-creation of the space between me and the other person who's receiving the feedback. So as a result, what can happen is we can perceive psychological danger. We can destabilize safety through the language that we're using. And when we do that, if we imagine our brain, we have this filing cabinet, we have this limbic system. In front of that, we have the front part of the brain, the frontal lobes, and that's the part of the brain where we have decision making, where we make change, you know, where we make sense, where we have reasoning, where we have logic. And if we go into a psychologically unsafe space, so if somebody comes to me and says, I'd like to give you some feedback, and for me that feels difficult. That feels difficult because of something that's happened before for me, or an experience I've had, or my relationship with somebody telling me what to do, then actually what happens is my front cortex goes offline. So neurobiologically, front cortex goes offline. So even though I might be getting feedback, and I might be giving you the right signals, it's not connecting, it's not in. It's like unplugging the Wi-Fi and then Googling. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So we need to find a way to connect in a way that is soothing to all of our processes. And this isn't about being soft. This isn't about avoiding conversations. If anything, I'd say it's the opposite. But it's about finding a way to be able to have a meaningful conversation with somebody from a completely different standpoint, in a way that allows us to talk about whatever it is that we need to talk about, but from a place of curiosity. So letting go of assumption and judgment, which are often wrapped in feedback, even though the training will tell us not to. The very nature that I am giving you feedback means that I am filtering through my stuff. And that becomes a barrier. So finding a place to do this from a different angle is really, really, really important. And this is why when we are often working with organisations, we run courses on how to connect with people, how to understand people, how to really, really understand people. So you can build relationships, build really productive relationships, and that takes a degree of self-understanding. What am I like in relationship? What works for me? What doesn't work for me? And being able to understand and give space to the other person and all the stuff that's going on for them, so that actually we build connection. So in the talk that I did last week, what we talked about was stopping feedback. Let's just get rid of it. Let's not do feedback anymore, but let's focus on building the relationships and the foundations where we can have connected conversations, where we can talk about everything. We can talk about the hard stuff, but through that connected conversation and that level of really deep understanding, we are more likely to be able to move into action. We are more likely to be able to step forward into, the things that we need to do to understand what's going on and to make a change. And, that sort of sits in a coaching space, but also it sits in a management space. It sits in a day-to-day conversation space. So, we run workshops on this, but we also do coaching. We run one-to-one coaching. We call it wellbeing coaching, wellness coaching, because to me, this is wellness. Wellness is a myriad of things. It has many different facets, and over the coming weeks and months, we'll kind of talk about all of these different aspects. We've talked a lot about fatigue management and how do we keep ourselves physically and mentally well. But it also, for me, well-being is about leadership, and it's about how we engage in relationships. We know that relationships are a major factor in well-being. They're a major factor when well-being goes off. So it's really, really important that we are skilled in building these relationships and that we have space to explore who we are in relationship, as well as how we take that into a co-created space with another. Because my energy meeting your energy is what creates the relationship. And if I understand my energy, and a lot of us don't, but if I understand my energy and I have the ability to have dialogue about yours, then we will build an understanding and a platform that allows us to work together really well. And when I'm talking about energy, that's not in a kind of untangible way. It's how I think, it's how I see the world. It's what makes me feel good, what makes me feel scared, what makes me feel nervous, all of those different emotions. So it's triggers, and it's how I see the world. It's really understanding the lens through which we view things. So I'd love to explore this with anybody who is interested. We have long-term coaching sessions, but we also have short-term blocks. We work with people for 3 months and do some really fast-paced work, really deep dive work to really help you unlock this and to work with this. We only have limited spaces available because of our capacity, because we are fortunate to be quite busy. But we do have some capacity starting in February. So if anybody's interested, drop me a line, Rebecca@veterinarysparkle.com, and we would be very, very happy to explore that. Okay, I will be back later on, maybe next week, with another little video blog. I think we might talk about elephants next. Which, if you're SPVS or you've done any work with me, you've probably met Ellie the elephant. And if you haven't, then there's something to look forward to. See you soon.